is up, everyone, and welcome back to another Transplants video. I am here just before I head out to a party to tell you, can you please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already to the channel. The support we received from Neville Cunningham's video last week was unbelievable. And if we can do that again and gain the amount of subscribers again, we will continue to just speed ahead of where we were meant to be. I wasn't expecting to hit 400 subscribers until late August. We now have a real chance to do it before August even starts. So if you can hit that subscribe button, it means that we can donate to organ donation when we get to 1,000 subscribers. So please make sure you do so. And if you haven't done already, hit the like as well. And yeah, in a bit, enjoy.
What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another Transplants episode where we're finding out another story of a transplantee who's used sport to improve their physical and mental health. And today we are joined by Mr. Nick Pomone. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you.
Yeah, so Nick, we'll start at the beginning, as we always do, as we always have done. So before your transplant, so I don't know how old you were when you had it, so that's why we're all here to find out. But before your transplant, how sort of active were you in your life?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm probably a bit of a new story to you, but I was actually born with kidney failure. Have any sort of activity or anything because I was just a baby. So I was literally born with polycystic dysplastic kidney issues. So one kidney was working and the other had cysts on it with only a 5% kidney function. So that's where the story started.
There you go. We haven't had a birth one yet, so that is brilliant. Not brilliant, but you know what I mean. We get to find out new different stories. So obviously, when you had your transplant, how old were you, and do you recollect most of it?
Yeah, a little bit. So it's kind of blurry because obviously I was young, but I had one when I was 5, but that didn't last too long because back then, what would it have been? Something like 1986 or something like that. It wasn't really known to transplant children, so everything was a bit of an experiment back then.
Yeah.
But then I had one when I was 10 and it was successful. Bit of a longer time in hospital than many children might experience today, because generally, more often than not, you're in and out within 2 weeks these days, whereas I was in for a good few months. So, but yeah, it all worked out in the end.
Obviously, did you still lead an active childhood? Were you still someone who, tried to get out and did social activities even with your health issues?
Yeah, I mean, I still, had friends at school. I mean, school was a bit sparse, obviously not being well and stuff like that. But when I was at school, generally, I had friends, played out in the playground, tried to do as much normal stuff as my body would allow me, I suppose.
Absolutely. So when did you first hear about Transplant Sport as the organisations, like the Transplant Games, stuff like that? When did you first hear about that?
Well, I would have found out probably, I had the transplant in 1993, and I would have probably found out in 95 because my first games was in 96 in Cardiff. But obviously there's a lot of planning to eventually go to these games. So we had a transplant coordinator who decided to get involved and create a children's team in Leeds, because that's where I was transplanted. And then from there we created a children's team, and that's the Leeds team today is big and healthy, full of kids of all transplants now. So majority was just kidney back then, but now it's full of all sorts of different transplants in the team. So it's grown.
So you were sort of part of the originals then, I guess, and the first ones, were you?
Yeah, first of the Leeds teams anyway. But like I say, there's a few earlier than us. I think we was one of the first lots of children's teams. I think it was kind of growing then, but the adults started in the 80s in Portsmouth, I believe, was the first Transplant Games. If that's worth looking out for, I can't remember the actual year, but I think it was the 80s.
Yeah. So what sort of experience do you have as sort of a young child at that point? Obviously, someone who's always been in hospital, quite ill. So how did you find that as an experience when you first went there?
I've had the conversation with quite a lot of patients who are adults, and I start thinking, if I had to go through it all again, how would I cope? Because when you're a child, you just take everything as it comes. So I felt back then, I just feel that, like, for me, it was the normal thing. So, you know, it was a children's ward, so you didn't see adult patients. So again, you're seeing children every day, so you think it's the norm. So I guess for me, I didn't really see myself as any different, because the majority of the time I was hanging around with children who was in the same boat, if you like, surviving some sort of illness.
Absolutely. So then when time went on, obviously you grew older and you started going to the adult games. And what sort of sense of community did you feel, especially as you grew older, with the transplant community? How was the community aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it's always been, even when you're in sort of the teen years, you know, the adult games and the adult competitors are always about. So there was always people to talk to about moving up into that adult section, and you know, they were always welcoming. So yeah, I mean, whenever you did the parades and final parades on the last days, it was always like Leeds children followed by the Leeds adults, so you was always have that connection there, and it was an easy transition, really.
Yeah. So what sort of events did you first go into when you were younger, and how has that transitioned through the years?
So when I first started, I kind of enjoyed the racket sports like badminton and table tennis, stuff like that. So enjoyed those sports. Played them pretty much throughout the kids children's team events. And then I don't know, from nowhere, I actually got invited to a event when I was 21. It was the very first David Hookes Memorial Trophy in Australia, which was basically, you know, you get the cricket ashes. It was basically a transplant ashes. So I was lucky enough to go over to Australia and play cricket over there out the blue. And from that, we competed in their local national games in Adelaide, and I did, because I'd never done the sports before, but I decided to do like athletics over there, and I came away with 4 golds and a silver. So I took up athletics for a bit, but as the years grew on, I went back to racket sports. So and then more recent years took up golf as well. So I've always liked to try all different things, really.
Absolutely. And it's one of the great things about, I think, the Transplant Games is that you're not limited, which I think is fantastic. So what moment could you pinpoint as, say, your best achievement in the games, and why?
I'd say 2007, because I was lucky enough to win one of the main trophies at the end of the event. Again, I'd won 4 golds and a silver at the British Transplant Games. It was in the 18 to 29 age group category, and so you win the best athlete of the year. The main reason it was a bit, well, I felt like it was a bit of an extra achievement, was because the length of time I was ill compared to quite a lot of the other competitors who've won it in the past. You know, so quite a lot of the competitors have been known to be fit and healthy straight away. Like, they might have only been on dialysis like a year or something like that. But with my medical past, it's 10 years on dialysis, and then from there I ended up with like all sorts of other issues like osteoporosis and scoliosis. So my body didn't develop in the same way as maybe someone who's already developed, gone on dialysis for 6 months, a year, and then they're still able to catch up with that level of fitness. So that's why it felt like a bit of an extra achievement.
Absolutely, mate. And so, in terms of people that you've met, what sort of is it like to be surrounded with people who sort of understand where what you've been through in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, it just becomes like a big family, really. It's like having extra shoulders to cry on, or whatever they call it. But yeah, if people need to chat and whatever, we're all there for each other. Especially now, like the transplant community is as close as it's ever been. Like with the virus and people asking questions and supporting each other, and trying to understand what the best decisions is right now. Because people are at tender hooks to say, can I go back to work, or should I be going out? Should I be doing this? And it's one of those situations, because it's all well and good being shielded and protected, but the mental health starts to go.
Absolutely. So talking to mental health, actually, you made a very good segue there. So how, in terms of your mental health, how much has physical activity made that positive in terms of not only competing, but competing alongside friends and stuff like that?
I mean, I think sport in general is a big help to anyone's mental health. I just think, unless you have, just if you have a hobby in general, it's always going to be, your mental health's got to be better than it would be if you didn't. Because I'm sure, I don't know, I pretty much would just be sat watching TV or feeling sorry for myself at some point. But when I have sport and stuff, it does set the mind off thing, and then it just makes it extra special when you're going up against people who's in the same boat, like and they've all got their own story to tell.
Yeah. And finally, to close off, we ask this question at the end all the time. So if you were to describe the impact of transplant sport in 3 words to you, what would you describe it as?
Life-changing experience.
Fantastic. So you got that nailed on. That's perfect. We've had loads of different takes on that. So brilliant. Gonna create a massive graphic at the end with all of them. But anyway, thank you very much, Nick, for joining me. It's been a real pleasure learning your story. And once again, just contributing to hopefully the growth of transplant sport in the mainstream media. It's something that we're trying to do. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and drop a subscribe. That'd be fantastic. And yeah, we will see you next time.